She's like a kid who never got bored of Minecraft, because every block held promises greater than its pixels, pistons firing to open gates to worlds ever explored, merely atoms in her eyes. She built horse armor and beacons and physics and life. She smells like freshly ground coffee and looks like sunbeams breaking through stained glass, draining into organ pipes and echoing through ribcage choirs all the way down into shadows and dark places. She stands in Grecian courts, draped in robes of foggy afternoons, ruling with a scepter made of the space-time continuum, sketching stories into stars that will someday be written into books stacked on musty library shelves. She smells like a library, remembered by some, forgotten by most, blamed for her stars and scars written by somebody else's frustrations when they pushed a little too hard. She feels like a scraped knee when she whispers mortality in your ear, not in hopes that you'll flee in fear, but so you remember how good a heartbeat feels. That there are people who will never be able to stub their toes or break their nose or see the extended versions of The Lord of the Rings. And she sounds like a river, brushing over boulder and pebble mistakes, dragging the jagged downstream only to have it smooth by the other side, deep and wide, and carving herself and her songs into every knuckle crease and laugh line. And I've seen her. I've seen her drown in silver lakes of betrayal and come up breathing love. I've seen her survive leviathans below and face beanstalk giants above. I've seen her travel back through hellfire history just to witness the first sunrise as it spills over Pangaea. I've heard her speak sun gods from their thrones just with words of forgiveness. I've seen her catch Icarus and hold Sisyphus and love Narcissus and sing Pandora back to sleep. And you call her faith, or hope, or whatever keeps the nightmares away, and I call her God, but it doesn't matter, because she is beautiful, and she is perfect, and I have never seen her pray. Are we okay? Hi, I'm Jess Smith, and my poem is called Faith. The story behind it is I was thinking about people's concepts of God, but also just kind of the spirituality and the faith that goes with that, and that kind of goes with what's often considered kind of hand in hand with religion, but I don't think that they have to go together. It's this idea of spirituality on one hand and religion on the other, and how they can be separate and just as strong, one without the other. Do I have a writing process? No? I'm gonna go with no. What usually happens is I'll be walking around and I'll be like, oh, that's a really good first line for a poem. Like, it'll just go into my head and it'll brew for a couple weeks or whatever, and then it just sort of explodes, and I write it all in 5 minutes, and that's it, and that's the poem. Sometimes I'll change things afterwards if I don't like how I've worded things, but it's very rare, and I just sort of write something and hope it's good. I've been writing poetry forever. It was my favorite medium of communication. It was always my favorite thing to read. I loved the way it sounded, especially rhyming poetry. And then spoken word I got into when I first moved to Edinburgh. So I went to an open mic night. I heard some people doing it, and I thought, well, that's a really cool medium. I would love to write a poem that I could then perform to an audience. And that's how I got into it. And now I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, I am really trying to I actually have 3 brand new pieces, and I love them, and I've poured my soul into them, and I still haven't memorized them. So right now I'm working on memorizing poems, because that is actually way harder for me than writing them, so that's what I'm doing. So I was hosting an open mic night and I wanted to have some audience interaction in between each of the performers. And I got up on stage and I was just gonna like tell a funny story, and then I started telling all these stories that I remembered from babysitting, just like about these ridiculous kids, and just like I thought it was super funny, so I just kept going. And 10 minutes later I'm like, oh, I'm hosting an open mic night, I should probably let the performers back on stage. So I'm super easily distracted, and I guess that's what we learned from that. Write sincerely. It can be really tempting to think of, oh, that's a really dramatic scenario that someone could be in, I'm going to write about that. But the best poetry is always going to come from something that you yourself have felt and experienced. So as much as I want to write about racism in America and stuff like that, I cannot try to write about it as if I have experienced it, as if I could even imagine what that would be like. I can write about how awful it can be to be a woman, and I can write about how awful it has been for my friends to be subjected to racism, but you have to start from a point of sincerity and having actually experienced what you're talking about. The effect that you have on other people. So just last night at a gig, a girl who I now know, her name is Liv, she walked up to me and she said, "Hi, I'm a politics student. I've never been able to express myself in any language that wasn't formal and removed from emotion. And you have," she said this to me, like I'm not like bragging. It's just like, she's like, "You changed my life." She's like, "I have never seen someone get up on a stage and talk about themselves like that and just be so free and open with your emotions." And she's like, "I really appreciated everyone, but you spoke to me." She said, "Your poetry changed my life." And that is a crazy concept. And it makes you feel amazing. It makes you feel like it's absolutely worth doing. It's worth making art.
What's your favorite breakfast?
Pancakes. But like American pancakes, big fluffy pancakes that can absorb the syrup, but not to the point where they get like mushy. You have to eat them right in this perfect period where they're like still crispy around the outside, but like soft in the middle. Pancakes.